Okay, the purpose of this lab is to share with you some of the tools that I had to gather in order for me to run my GNS3 lab and being able to use the Dell EMC Smart Fabric OS10 virtualization software and the Dell OS10 Smart Fabric OS10 virtualization guide shows 3 examples in how you can set up your equipment. In this case, I chose the first method. I'm running the GNS3 server version 2.2.32 in the same machine that I am running the GNS3 client. So this is going to be this scenario right here, the first one. And so the GNS3 server is running on the VMware Workstation 16 player that I downloaded for free. And if I check under help, it's going to show me the version that I'm running, which is VMware Workstation 16 player version 16.2.3 with this build right there. So let me close that. The only issue that I ran into is that this guide right here is meant for this scenario right here, in which a dedicated server is used to run the GNS3 VM server along with the VMware ESXi hypervisor, and as you can see, is decoupled from the GNS3 client. And so this is something I ran into, and I'm gonna show you that if you wanna do the first scenario, I'm gonna show you some of the things I did to get it working. It took me a little while because I had to go into different websites. I had to check quite a few videos just to find some answers, because I just couldn't get it to work, because I was following these instructions, but I just didn't know how the GNS3 actually worked when I first installed it. So I went to the GNS3 site and I downloaded the VMware Workstation version. In this case, on this document that was created, I think, in 2020, they had the version 2.18, but the one I'm actually using is 2.2.32 that I downloaded, I think, in July, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so once you download the GNS3 VM, the next thing I did is that I downloaded the VMware Workstation 16 player, and then once you download the VMware Workstation 16 player, and as you can see here on this guide, it says GNS3 VM ESXi 5.1, but I'm not using a dedicated server, and so this threw me off like really bad. So if I go back here to this VMware Workstation, I'm gonna go into, because I already I'm running, actually this server is already on, it's already working. So that's why whenever this server is on, I'm able to see it on GNS3. Over here it says GNS3 VM on the right. It's actually running, and it's showing the CPU usage and the RAM and all that. Let me see how much RAM I'm using right now. 30%. Okay, not bad. And it showed me that I have switch 1, switch 2, and switch 3. So that's good. It's actually working. So if I go here to the player, and this is something that is going to help you, if you go to manage and then to virtual machine settings, and this is the first thing you're going to do. You're going to set up the the GNS3 VM, you're gonna set up, you're gonna specify how many processors you're gonna give it to this VM, to this virtual machine. Remember, this is the virtual machine that is gonna host all those virtual appliances. In this case, the Dell OS10 switches, for example. And if you have Cisco switches, or emulators, you can also add them as well. But I'm not doing a mixed environment. I just haven't get to that point. I don't know if that's feasible, but I'm gonna stick to the Dell switches. And so I just selected. I have a dual 6-core processors, but I just selected 4 cores for this environment. 4 cores. I allocated hard disk 150 gig, and on the second disk I have 488 gig because this machine is mostly just for labs and for some gaming as well. You gotta mix it up. And another thing I did here, I have 32 gigs of RAM. I have 32 gigs of RAM available on this workstation, Dell Workstation, and I'm allocating 26 gigs for this virtual machine. So that way, if I turn on multiple OS10 appliances, Dell switches, right? Then each appliance is gonna consume RAM. So you don't want to have, you want to give it as much as you can. So that way you can build a larger fabric. So I already talked about the memory allocation and recommendation. I already mentioned to do the four cores for this particular machine. I could have do 8, but I'm doing 4 for now, and it's working fine. I also enabled the virtualized tools for these Xeon processors, and also enabled the virtualized CPU performance counters. That it is something that is mentioned here. Enable virtualized CPU performance counters. If you see the manual for this ESXi, and I did it on mine, which is the VMware Workstation player that is running on the same machine that I am running the GNS3 server. Let's see what else. If I keep on scrolling down, and this is what threw me off, is that it tells you to go into the networking, and then it tells you to pay attention to this IP address, which is 100, 104, 100, 199. That it doesn't apply to us because we're using this we're using this GNS3 server in the same workstation as the client. So that's why. But if you care about the IP address for this GNS3 server, it's right here. It's already assigned by this GNS3 process. It gave it the IP address of 192, 168, 209, 129, port 80, and then it tells you that if you want to log via SSH, it tells you the name and the password that you have to enter. But like I said before, that is for using a remote server. Okay, so before I show you how I configure the GNS3 client, let me just point out a few things on this virtual machine that you need to set up before you do anything. So let's go to manage virtual machine settings. Once you go into virtual machine settings, another thing that you need to pay attention is the network adapter. So whenever you go into the network adapter, which is the custom VMnet 1, right? Because if you go into the networking for the PC that you're working on, or workstation or laptop, if you go to the network adapters for your device, I just don't recall how I went here, but let me show you. I think I typed network device network status, and then I went into change adapter options. Let me close this, and then over here it's gonna tell you whenever you create this GNS3. No, I'm sorry. Whenever you set up your VMware Workstation player, it's gonna add a couple of interfaces. For example, it's gonna add VMware Network Adapter VMnet1. I said that again. VMware Network Adapter VMnet1. And it's gonna also add the VMware Network Adapter VMnet8. So the only one I care for now is VMnet1. I haven't get to use this other one. I will eventually, but let's stick to this one. So one thing that you need to understand about this VM Network Adapter VMnet is that you have to go into this network adapter on the virtual machine settings for VMware Workstation Player, and then you have to go into custom. If it's on host only, you have to move it to custom, a specific virtual network, and then you need to select that adapter that was configured, whenever you install the VMware Workstation Player. In this case, you have to select VMnet1 host only, for example, and I don't worry about the NAT because I haven't get to that part yet. So let's just worry about the network adapter. Okay, make sure that you select custom and VMnet1 host only, which is the one that was set up by whenever you install the VMware Workstation Player. So another thing I was having an issue once in a while is that if for some reason, let's say that you are in GNS3 and there is no communication and the GNS3 server is down. So one thing to overcome that is to right click, disable VMnet1, for example, wait a few seconds, and then come back and enable. Once you disable, then it's gonna give you the option to enable again, and once you do that, that should be able to get you back up and running. And if that doesn't work, I think I'm jumping a little bit, but let me just explain. So if by enabling and disabling the this interface right here, VMnet1, doesn't work, another thing you can do is to go to help and run the setup wizard, and then just go run appliances in a virtual machine, and then just select the default, which is localhost. Make sure it's localhost, and then port 3080 TCP, and then next, and it says connection to the local GNS3 server has been successful, and that's how you. And when you hit next, then you just make sure you skip this. You don't need to run this setting right here. Cancel. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so now that I explained how I configured the virtual machine for the GNS3 server, let me close this, and I'm gonna tell you how I got there. Okay, so player, manage, virtual machine settings, and once you're in the virtual machine settings, you're gonna be able to select how much RAM do you want to give for that virtual machine. I will give it as much as you can, so that way you can build a larger fabric. I selected only 4 processors, 4 cores. If you have 8 cores or 16 cores, you can allocate half if you want, or just 4 cores. It all depends. If you need more, you can always create another virtual machine. So the hard disk space, make sure I had to expand I think the default was lower than 150 gig, but keep in mind that every appliance is gonna be about 2 gigs or 3 gigs. So the more appliances that you put into your project, the more disk space you're gonna need here on this GNS3 VM server. So this is something that you might have to expand. I can give it 200 gig, but for now I'm gonna do 150. I can always expand. Let's see what else. Very important to do the network adapter, VMnet 1 host only. I don't worry about NAT for now. Let me cancel that, and let's go back here. So now okay, so if you follow the guide that Dell provides, this is the thing I was telling you. It threw me off. It's actually written for a remote server, and I'm not using a remote server. So let's go scroll down here. But don't worry about this. I'll show you what I have in mind to do to run locally the GNS3 server and VM. Then it says to set up the GNS3 client. In this case, the GNS3 VM server and the GNS3 client need to be the same version, and you can just go to the GNS3 site and download the client, right? In this case, it says welcome to GNS3 2.1.8. Let me see what I have here. I have version 2.2.32, which is the same version as the GNS3 server, 2, 2, and 32. Make sure these two match. Let me see what else. Then it tells you to select, the most common packets that need to be unpacked, right? It tells you that, it's going to go into program files, directory GNS3, for example, and this is going to complete the installation. And then what you're going to do, you're going to start the GNS3, and this is what threw me off. Select a remote server. Well, I don't have a remote server, so what you're going to do is that whenever you go into GNS3, let me make this bigger. Let's go here. So if you go to File and then go to Preferences, and if you go to Preferences, you're gonna leave the General tab, the General section by default. You're gonna go into Server, and then what you're gonna do, you're gonna enable Local Server. That's what you're gonna do here on this tab right here, Server, Enable Local Server. I would leave everything, all this by default, which is the where the exec file is for the GNS3 server, for example. Make sure that the host binding is localhost. Make sure that the port is 3080 TCP. Right. And let's see what else is important here. Leave everything, all this by default, and then click on the remote server tab, and you're not going to add anything there because we're running it from the same workstation, the server and the client. Then you go to the GNS3 tab, and this is something nobody told me. I had to figure out. So basically, I click on enable the GNS3 VM, and it's asking like, all right, what is the virtualization engine that you want to use? The hypervisor, right? So in this case, you have the option of using Hyper-V, a remote server, VirtualBox, but the one recommended by Dell is to use the VMware Workstation player. So that's the one that we're going to be using. And then another thing that you need to be careful here is that you need to select the name that you gave to your GNS3 virtual machine. So what I mean is, if I go back here to this virtual machine, let me go back to manage virtual machine settings. If I go to options, whenever I created this virtual machine, I gave it a name. So the name I gave it is GNS3 T7810, which is my Dell Precision workstation that I bought secondhand. VM SIG, which are my initials, for example. So this is the name of the virtual machine, right? So whenever you are in the client, you need to make sure that you select the name. You refresh here, and then it should show you the name that you gave your machine. So that's something I overlooked when I was explaining how I set up my GNS3 server VM. I just left port 80 by default. You don't have to click on these boxes. And I just put here actions to take when closing GNS3 is to stop the GNS3 VM. I close my client. It's going to close my GNS3 VM. So let's go ahead and see what else I have here. And that's about it. That's all I did as far as I remember. And then I was able to see, like, for example, this Chekovic CPU is showing PC1, PC2, that this PC1 and PC2 are part of the GNS3 client. That's why it's under the client. But the Dell OS10 virtual machines, they reside on the GNS3 VM that I was telling you about in the beginning, and that is that's why you have to give it a good amount of space. I gave it 150 gig, if you remember, because the more VMs that you add to your project, the more space you're gonna need. So let me just, and I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but I'm just trying to save you some time, because yeah, it took me a little while to figure it out. So over here, I gave it 150 gig. If you can give it 200 gig, that'll be better. You can always expand. In this case, the reason why I cannot expand right now is because I have the virtual machine on, and I don't want to turn it off right now. Let's see what else. I guess that's it. And once you're able to get this running, right, being able to turn on GNS3 and being able to connect to the GNS3 server, and you get all this green, then you're gonna be ready to follow the recommendations about starting the GNS3 client, page 14, and then it's gonna tell you how you can import the appliances, how to turn them on, how to turn them off. So let's say that you want to reload the switch, just stop and then start, because if you do the reload command, the GNS3 doesn't take it well, because remember, it's an emulator. Let's see what else. If I were, yeah, and then you can just practice by looking at these other pages. It tells you how to import an appliance. Really easy. It tells you how to install it, how to drag it into the project, and how to get it all the way to command prompt. And let me see what else I can give you as an advice. Let me think about this. Okay, so now that I kind of show you some of the things that you have to look for whenever you are, and remember, if this is not working, make sure that you turn on and off those virtual interfaces I was telling you about. Enable and disable the adapter VMnet 1, for example. Another thing you can do is to go back here and do the setup wizard. so that way it can trying to join the GNS3 client to the server, because it's going to be on the same machine, on the same Windows machine. I have a Windows 10. Let's see what else. Okay, so now let me show you some of the folders I have here. Let's see. This is my lab PC. So let's see if I can show you. Where did I put it? Oh yeah. So I just have a folder that I'm dedicating for networking, and in this folder for networking, I have a folder for all the images for the Dell OS virtualization 10.5.3.4, which is a newer version than the one on the labs that I recorded, and you know. So then over here it showed me the different appliances. Most switches are based on the 5248, the Dell S5248, which is a 48 port of 25 gig, for example. And I just haven't tried this other 4128. I don't know if it's gonna be the same, or is there gonna be any differences, or yeah, I just haven't checked. So, but I'm familiar with this 5248, and let's see what else is important here. So I just told you about the images. Okay, these are all the files for the GNS3 VM, and also for the VMware Workstation. Yeah, everything I downloaded from the GNS3 site. I have my documents for the Dell demos. This is what I used to build my labs. Okay, for OS 10 getting started, and OS 10 advanced. I'm thinking about maybe doing some videos about Ansible, but I need to start learning about Sonic, the Sonic operating system. So that I think Ansible is gonna have to wait for me. Let's see what else. No, that's about it. Hopefully that will help you to get it running. And I guess that's it for now.
And if you play that game, then you just might make a change. Rearrange all the bad to okay. Take the worst thoughts saying, turn them to a game. Take the best thoughts saying, put them on display. On repeat in your brain till you're feeling no more pain. Never slow yourself down, you can do some more. Push past all the pain and you find a door. Open it up and finally explore everything that you thought you could never do before. And even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.